the first word. Joshua, always the most restless of the Tefts, was the first to break the silence. He held up a massive, dripping oyster. "Oyster," he said clearly, pointing at the shell. The taller Narragansett boy tilted his head. He stepped forward, touched the rough surface of the shell, and spoke a word that sounded like music and water combined. "Aponanahak." Joshua grinned, his eyes lighting up. He tried to mimic the sounds, tripping over the syllables. The Narragansett boys laughed. Not a mean laugh, but the kind shared between friends. They sat down right there in the salt hay, the cultural divide narrowing with every shared shell. Over the next few hours, the marsh became a classroom. The Teft brothers realized that their English labels were clunky compared to the descriptive language of the land. The food. The Narragansett boys pointed to the corn in a distant field and said, "Uachimnish." When they pointed to the sweet wild strawberries staining Tabitha's apron as she walked down to join them, they whispered, "Wootahimniash." The greetings. They taught the Teft children to say, "Eskutquanquisin," a way of asking, "How do you do?" That felt more like a song than a question. The names of the world. They pointed to the river, calling it Sipu, and to the great stone ender chimney rising in the distance, which they viewed with a mix of wonder and suspicion. Tabitha had watched from the ridge before approaching. She carried a small loaf of rye and Indian bread, wrapped in a cloth. She offered a piece to the younger Narragansett boy. He took it, tasted the salt and the grain, and nodded. "Mitchin," he said, "eat." He reached into a pouch at his side and handed her a string of purple and white beads carved from quahog shells. "Wampum," Tabitha whispered, recognizing the money of the forest. The boy corrected her gently, "Wampum." By the time the sun began to dip, the baskets were full, and the Teft children's heads were swirling with new sounds. They had learned that Nitop meant friend, and as they walked back toward the stone ender, Joshua kept repeating it under his breath. John Teft watched from the doorway as his children returned, their clothes muddy and their pockets full of Narragansett gifts. He saw the way Joshua looked back toward the woods with a lingering gaze. In that moment, the language of the Tefts had grown. They weren't just settlers anymore. They were becoming part of the pulse of Rhode Island, speaking the words of the people who had walked these shores since the beginning of time. It was a golden afternoon of peace, a memory that would haunt the family in the darker years to come. Mary added this new adventure into her journal.
In the tall, salt hay of the Pettaquamscut's shore, where the Tefts and the Narragansett were neighbors once more, Samuel and Joshua, on a humid afternoon, underneath the light of a broad summer moon, met two brothers, bronzed by the sun and the breeze, stepping out from the shade of the grand white oaks trees. No common tongue did the children share, just the scent of the water and the open, wild air. Joshua held an oyster, dripping with foam, a Ponanahawk, the other said, pointing to home, a music that tripped over the English tongue, a bridge that was built while the family was young. Tabitha, the gentle, approached with a loaf, a gift from the hearth to the children of the cove. She saw the wild berries, so vibrant and deep, a harvest the Narragansett did skillfully keep. They exchanged their words, Mitchin, to eat, a quiet alliance, a friendship to greet. They learned the Nitop, the word for a friend, a promise they hoped would not come to an end. John Teft watched from the stone ender's sturdy high wall as his children learned language, to answer the call, to speak of the Wootahimniash in the soft afternoon light, before the coming years and the shadow of night.